Today we will be learning Daf Lamed Beis Lamed Beis. We are on for the Mishnahs there, so we'll be starting from the Mishnah. Nosnoi be'ilan, if he took the Eruv and he placed the Eruv on top of it on a tree, so l'mayla ma'asara, if the tree if he puts it on the tree, but higher than 10 tvachim on the tree, if it's put on the tree higher than 10 tvachim, ein eruv eruv. Then the eruv is not a good eruv. L'mata ma'asara, if you put the eruv on the tree but below 10 tvachim, eruv eruv. So then it is a good eruv. Nosne be'bayr, if you put it into a bayr, filo omak mea ama eruv eruv. So it doesn't make a difference how deep the bayr is. It's an eruv. Okay, today we'll be discussing about the tree. Now, the putting the Eruv on the tree, so there is a principle concerning the Eruv, that the Eruv, the person, when he gets the Eruv, puts the Eruv, not only does he put the Eruv, but he's kind of shvisa. It's kind of shvisa that he puts aside a place where he is resting on Shabbos, where he's going to be in Shabbos. That's going to be his center for the Shabbos. So you put the food next to the place where he is going to be rested, where it's going to be his center for Shabbos, which is Kohen Shvis. So the din is that the person cannot be Kohen Shvisa in one domain, and the food which you put should be in a different domain. It has to be in the same domain. In Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew, it's rishus. It has to be in the same rishus as the person has to be in the same rishus as the Eruv. So we've just done the Mishnah, and just to explain a bit the Mishnah is that the principle of having an Eruv is that is the center of where you're going to stay on Shabbos. So the place where you're going to stay on Shabbos has to be in the same rishus as the Eruv. We already discussed before about that even if you can't eat the Eruv and so on. So even practically, the person has to have a potential to eat the Eruv, or if other people can eat the Eruv, so he's not going to necessarily eat the Eruv. So even though we learned before that not necessarily, to many opinions, you even have to be able to eat the Eruv. But at the very least, the Eruv has to be accessible, and accessible means that he and the Eruv has to be in the same domain. If it's in a different domain, different rishus, so then it's not accessible, because if for instance, he's in a rishus hayachid and the Eruv is in rishus rabbim, so it's not accessible because he has to be able to bring the Eruv to eat it in his domain, in the place where he's staying. So if the place where he's staying is in rishus hayachid and the rest in rishus rabbim, so it's no good, because he has to be able to bring it into the place where he's staying. And otherwise, the problem is that he is in one place and the food's in a different domain. So then that doesn't work to make an Eruv. So just let me point out that if he's not permitted to bring the Eruv to where he is not permitted to bring the Eruv to where he is, so then that means that he and the Eruv are not in the same domain, in the place where it's Kohen Shvis. That means he and the Eruv are not in the same domain. But the reason why it's not a good Eruv is not because he can't bring the food to where he's staying on Shabbos, to his main point of where he's staying on Shabbos. That's not the reason. The reason is because he's in a different domain. So that's the principle. The principle is in a different domain. Now, what I'm saying is that if you cannot bring it from where the Erev is to where you're staying, on the way made your center for where you're staying Shabbos, so then so it's obvious that you're in a different domain. You're in one Rishus, so that is not in the same domain. But because the reason is that the Erev is not effective in such a situation is because you are not in the same domain as the food. So then there could be some leniency that even though you can't practically bring the food, sometimes there might be some leniency that even though you practically can't bring the food, nevertheless it's considered in the same domain. So there is a certain room for leniency because the principle which cannot be crossed into making the Erev effective is that you have to be in the same domain. So if somehow, even though you can't bring the food to where you are, we will consider it for some reason the same domain, that will be acceptable. Another thing which I'd like to say is that the Erev is a din derabanan. So therefore, obviously, with the din Erev, we can be a bit more lenient, and the practicalities of carrying are in many instances deraisa, and therefore there would be no room for leniency. So there might be certain leniency as regards to the effectiveness and the validity of the Erev, which in the actual carrying we can't act. In the practical carrying we will not be able to make it if it's a deraisa. So let's not the Gemara. Yosef Rabbi Rabbi the three of them. These three people were sitting, and also a very important person was there. Yosef Rav Nachman Gabai. Rav Nachman was also there. And those three were saying, so they were examining the Mishnah, and they were saying, "Hi, I forgot to mention about the tree. The most important thing I forgot to mention, and that is about the tree. So the tree is what's the difference if it's higher than 10 tefachim or lower than 10 tefachim? The difference between higher than 10 tefachim and lower than 10 tefachim is because if the tree is 4 tefachim wide, 4 by 4, and if it's 4 by 4 and it's high 10 tefachim, it's a reshus hayachid. So that means that if it's so it means the person, if he will be spending Shabbos at the bottom of the tree, so the Shabbos he's spending at the bottom of the tree. But if the food is on the tree and the tree is a tree which has in it at least 4 by 4 tefachim, and if you put it on the tree higher than 10 tefachim, so above 10 tefachim is considered reshus hayachid. So therefore, that means that the person who's sitting on and his place is at the bottom of the tree. So the place where you put the Erev is reshus hayachid. So you cannot take it from the reshus hayachid and bring it to the reshus Rabbi. If you put it on the tree lower than 10 tefachim, lower than 10 tefachim is not even though it's 4 by 4, it's only a carmelist. So that will be the difference between high and 10 tefachim. Taken from a carmelist. It's only a drabanan. So therefore, there will be a room for leniency because it's only a drabanan. If it's lamat masarat vachim to be effective for the erev, lamal masarat vachim when the raisa you cannot take from the tree and bring it to the reshus Rabbi where he is staying on Shabbos. Then that makes him and the food being in 2 separate domains. Okay, so now they were sitting examining the Mishnah. The Ka'amid said, "Hi, the koi. Where is this tree? You say this the tree is the difference if it's higher than 10 tefachim, but that's lower than 10 tefachim. So where is it? The tree is in reshus hayachid. So then, what's different if it's higher than 10 tefachim, lower than 12 tefachim? Because reshus hayachid goes is till the heavens reshus hayachid. Therefore, just like lower than 10 tefachim is not a problem. And you can, and it's considered the same. It's the same reshus, but reshus hayachid you can carry from the tree to where you are at the bottom of the tree. The same thing also, if even the higher than 10, it's also the Shus Yachid the Shus Yachid is the Tila Adarakia. So it's all in the Shus Yachid. And you can take it from the higher than 10 Tvachim and bring it down to the ground where the person is sitting. The Elo, the Koibish Rabbi. So what can you say that the tree is in a Shus Rabbi? Okay. So the tree is so around the tree is a Shus Rabbi, and the tree itself, if being a high tree, would be a Shus Yachid, because being above 10 Tvachim, the tree itself, even though around it is a Shus Rabbi, a tree in a Shus Rabbi, if it's not tall enough, it will be a Shus Yachid. So the Miskavan lives in Lish B'Scheicha. Where is the person intending to spend Shabbos? Then if he's saying that he's intending to spend his Shabbos in the tree, no, so that shouldn't be a problem, because the tree is a Shus Yachid, he's also in Shus Yachid. Him and the Erev is in one place, so he's in the same domain. What's the problem? So he's spending Shabbos in the tree. That's fine. Elo, so that's what should be mutter. Elo niskavel is lamat. So it must be that he's intends to spend Shabbos not on the tree, but intends to spend Shabbos on the floor next to the tree. And b'meila, so he's in Shus Rabim, and the tree is Rosh Hashanah. Time then. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question, which that there's a problem. Even l'mayla l'mata, you can't put the erev on the you can't put the erev on the tree, because if you put the erev on the tree, so you're not allowed to be mishtamish with a tree. There's a gzerim d'Rabbanan that since maybe you cut off a branch or something, you'll pluck some fruit from the tree. Because of that, you're not allowed to be mishtamish with a tree, and therefore, even if you put your erev is on the tree, that will also be considered mishtamish with a tree, which you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. So how can you put the erev on the tree? So Gemara says, even if it's even if the tree it puts it on the tree lower than 10 tvachim, still if it puts it even lower than 10 tvachim, you still not allowed to do it, because being mishtamish with the tree. Is using the tree. So the Gemara says, and that it's talking about he's in Rishus Rabim, and he wants to Shabbat, to spend Shabbos at the base of the tree. You can't use it. You can't use a tree for putting the erev. So it's Rabbi that it's Rabbi the are called like Gozral ben Hashmosh. Rabbi was late in the next page. We'll learn the machlokes and Rabbi and the Rabbanon. Like the opinion of Rabbi is that anything which is with the Rabbanon, so ben Hashmoshes is permitted. Ben Hashmoshes is Sofik Yom and Sofik Laila, and according to Rabbi, the Rabbanon, since only the Rabbanon says Sofik, they were not geyser in it, and they allowed to do it on Ben Hashmosh. Now, when is the Erev Koina and becomes valid? When does the Erev become Koina? When does it become effective? The Erev becomes effective Ben Hashmoshes. If after Ben Hashmoshes the Erev disappeared, as long as it was there Ben Hashmoshes, so then the Erev is good, and you can walk to the other city which you want to walk. So the when does have the Erev have to be effective? Ben Hashmoshes. No, Ben Hashmoshes, there's no problem with the tree, because you're allowed to be mishtamish with the tree Ben Hashmoshes, because it's only there the Rabbanon. And right. So this is what they said. So they said that that it's talking about when the Shus Rabim and the trees and the trees in Shus Rabim, and he's spending Shabbos lamata on the ground. So Amar Nachman said, "Yeah, sure, yeah, it's correct. It's very good what you're saying. What you are saying is very good." That's what Shmuel also said. Shmuel also said that. They said what? They said it. Right. Yeah. So Shmuel also agreed, said it. Omrulei Petiru Bakula High. When Shmuel said it, he went into all this examination, this detailed examination of the Mishnah, and asking all these questions and answers to get this result. They were surprised that Shmuel said that. You went so much into such a deep discussion. So the Gemara says, what are they so surprised? I mean, if they would discuss it, why can't Shmuel discuss it? They're asking Rav Nachman, when he's saying the name of Shmuel, did you go discussing some detail? If they're able to, so is Shmuel able to discuss it. Okay, we have to change the version of what they asked him. Normally, they said to him, that was sort of finalized and made part of the tradition, which is given over as part of the Gemara. And yes, that was the conclusion, and that was put into, so to speak, the Gemara, that which will be passed down as a final teaching. We also learned the memory, the same thing, that this Mishnah is talking about the Iln Ha'im B'Shus Rabin, Askinon, that the tree is telling B'Shus Rabin, Gavoya Asara, V'Rochov Arba, it's 10 Tvachim high, and the width is 4 by 4. And he intended to spend Shabbos Lamata at the bottom of the tree, and the heter, which is based on his Rabbi, is based on the heter of Rabbi, the Omer called over Shumishim Shvus, like Gozra bin Ashmosh. That even though there's a problem of being shtamish with the Erev, it's not a problem with the shtamish with the tree. It's not a problem because ben Ashmoshes, the opinion of Rabbi is that you're allowed to be shtamish with the tree ben Ashmoshes. That's when the Erev comes. Okay, so now we've settled what the Mishnah is talking about. Now, Omer Rava says Rava lo yishanu. This din that if it's higher than 10 tvachim on the tree, if it's higher than 10 tvachim on the tree, then it's not effective as an erev. Is elo be'iln ha'im chutz l'borush Iyar. That if the tree is outside the city, le'borush Iyar. What's the borush Iyar? Borush Iyar is the distance outside the city, which with the outside the city, which is still considered part of the city. So it's a Burush Iyar is like a woman is pregnant. So there's a bit of an extension, but the extension of the city, that even though it's outside the city, it's still considered part of it, of the city. For instance, that if you have a city, so if you have a house which is 70 amas away from the city, so if a house is 70 amas away from the city, it's still considered part of the city, even though it's like this single house, it will still be considered part of the city. If it's 71 amas or more, so then the house will not be considered part of the city. So therefore, the 70 amas is 70 amas and 2/3 actually. And so that's considered the Burush Iyar. So if it's because if you have a house, that would be considered as part of the city. So when we say if this tree was outside the Burush Iyar, but if it's part of the city, the tree is in the Burush within the 70 cubits of the city, which is considered part of the city. I feel the Maila Masara, even if it's higher than Asara, so still it's an effective Erev. Hareza Erev, it's an Erev. Why? What's the reason? The Moshe command the Malidan, because the city is as if it's full, and because the city, Rashi explains, the city is walled off by houses. So the concept of a city is that it's surrounded by the inside of the city is surrounded by houses, and so therefore, in other words, the concept of the city is that it will look at it as it's all walled up. It's walled up, even though we're extending it. We're talking actually outside the city, it's just within 70 amas of the city. Nevertheless, the concept of a city, when we look at a city, we consider the city as if it's all walled up, even though the poil is outside the walling of the rest of the house. It's within 70 amas, but it's considered as if it's all walled up, and therefore it's considered as if it's full. So therefore, it's all one domain, so to speak. So therefore, the city is one domain because it's all pulled up. It's one domain, and therefore even it's higher than 10 tefachim, it's still considered one domain with the base of the tree. And this is only a heter, a kula, only b'negei to Eruvin. This is why it said at the very beginning, the ship, that this is only b'negei to Eruvin. Of course, if you have a shus Rabbi in the city, and the things on the tree, there's no way you're allowed to carry from the tree and bring it to the shus Rabbi. Even though you're making the bikoina shvis at the base of the tree, bikoina shvis at the base of the tree, and the Eruv is on top of is on top of 10 tefachim, you will not be permitted to take it from the 10th tefachim and bring it down to where you koine shvisa and eat it. You will not be able to do that because it's a derais. But b'negei to Eruv derabanan, we don't consider it in a separate domain. We consider that the domain of the city it's a walled area. We consider it like a walled area, and therefore, if it's a walled area, so everything is there. It's like full, and therefore everything is just considered just one domain. And like I said before, the halacha of Eruv is not necessarily dependent on the practically being accessible. It has to be in the same domain. That's the principle which affects Eruv. So therefore, sometimes we make a leniency because it's the Eruv is only the Rabbanon. We have this leniency. We consider it one domain, even though practically it's not in one domain. But if halachas, the Hilchas Shabbos is not in one domain, but if the Hilchas Shabbos besides Eruv, when you get to Eruv, we consider it one domain. So the Gemara says, oh, if that's the case, if the city, if the outside the city is considered one domain, and even if it's something is above 10 tefachim and beneath the Shus Rabim, it's considered one domain. Why? Because for Eruv we're making that way. Even though there's no mechitzas around the actual the place where the Eruv is, like you mentioned before. So if that's the case, it's kiv and the Omer since Rabbi said. So the Gemara wants to say that we'll find another that bichlal, but always the Gemara wants to say that always the person where he's koine shvisa, he always has arba amos around him, which is considered his domain. So just like a city is considered one domain, inside the arba amos of the person where he's koine shvisa should also be considered one domain. So if it's by the base of the tree, he's koine shvisa by the base of the tree. So therefore, the tree is in his domain, and even the higher than 10 tefachim should be his domain. Where do we get this idea from that the person when he's koine shvisa he has arba amos? Where do we? There's a halacha. There's halacha where the reason for the halacha is that the arba amos where you're koine shvisa. So the entire arba amos is considered one rishus, one domain. What's that? That's the din of Rabbi. Kim dam Rabbi hanois neirube. Somebody puts an erev yeshli arba amos. He has arba amos. And let me explain that. It's talking about a case when the person is he made the erev after the 2000 amos. He's on the 2002 on the amma number 2002. That's where he put his erev. So he puts his erev in the amma of 2002, and it's kind of shvisa over there on 2000 amma 2002. Now the problem is the erev is supposed you can't walk more than 2,000 amas. So therefore, the 2,000 amas is tum of the city, so he can't get to the erev. So how can it be affect him? How can the erev affect him if he can't walk more than 2,000 amas from the city? That means he can't get to the place where he's kind of shvisa, where he's centered himself on Shabbos. He can't get there. And Rabbi says, no, it's nicht gefährlich. Yeah, as long as it's within arba amos of the 2,000, of the limit of 2,000. As long as so, then it's considered like one rishus. Because if say on the amma number 2002 or the amma number 2003, you put your what's it called there, your food there, and your koine shvisa there. So then the whole arba amos around it becomes your rishus. The whole arba amos like your rishus. So like you built a house there, as if you built a house there. But how big is the house? All the arba amos around it. So you have the arba amos around it, So then that means that it's as if he built a house and part of the house was within the 2000. Because he has Arba Amas. He's on number 2003. So he has, so with the Arba Amas is already in the Tchum. So he has a house which is partially in the Tchum and partially outside the Tchum. Now, if you have a house which is partially inside the Tchum, partially outside the Tchum, so you can put the Eruv there. That's okay. So in other words, what happens? So this din of Rava that you can put the Eruv on the Amma of 2002 means that even though there's no mechitzas there, you make mechitzas, you have no house there, the fact that you put the Eruv is considered as if it's fenced up around it in the Arba Amas. If Arba Amas around the fence, no. So so according to that, so that we see the Arba is considered fenced up, so it should also be considered one domain. And the tree should also be part of that domain, just like the city. So we see it's a similar concept to the city, that even that the city is considered one domain, even though it's outside the mechitza or whatever. It's so the similar concept is by Arba Amas is considered as if it's fenced up. If it's fenced up, and the tree is inside it. No, the tree is inside it, so it should be considered one domain. And therefore, even though Poyel Mamash can't carry from the tree to downstairs because it should happen deraisa, but for purposes of the Rabbanon, should be effective and it should be considered in one domain. It should be made as if it's in one domain. So therefore it should be considered one domain. The kids say so. We're talking about that the branches of the tree, there are more than 4 amas from the tree trunk. So you have the tree trunk. The branches are protruding more than 4 arba amas. So when the branches are more than arba amas from the tree trunk, so therefore, and where is the koinish shvisa? It's koinish shvisa by the trunk of the tree, the base of the tree. So that's the koinish shvisa. That means that his food is outside the arba. So the food's outside and it's not accessible. Why? Because if it's higher than 10 tefachim, it's higher than 10 tefachim, so then the poil he can't carry it. It's not accessible. You can't carry it from the Rishus HaYochid because it's higher than 10 tefachim. The branch is higher than the branches are higher than 10 tefachim, so it's not accessible to the. You can't bring it into the Rishus Rabbi where he's standing at the base of the tree. And because of Erev, it's considered one domain because it's like this in the 4 amas. It's considered fenced off, but his thing is at the base of the tree. But this is more than 4 amas away, so the branches protrudes more, and that's why he put his area. Put his way far away. If he put his area far away, so that's already him, and it's considered 2 separate domains because it's outside. There's more than Arba Amas from where he intends to stay. Where the actual food is. So yeah. And where does he intend to make his stay? At the base of the tree. Sure. So therefore, that's what we said. That's why. If it's lower than 10 tefachim, then it is accessible, even though it's outside Arba Amas. But it's not. It's lower than 10 tefachim. The branch is lower than 10. It's considered the Carmelis. With the Rabbanon, because carrying from a Carmelis, if the tree, if it's the part of it, the tree which is less than 10 tefachim, is a Carmelis. So